Women's Wellness Authority is your go-to podcast for discovering the hidden gems of holistic health and well-being. In each episode, we dive deep into the many layers of wellness, from mental and physical health to spiritual growth. Through insightful interviews with experts, healers, and thought leaders, we uncover alternative approaches, healing practices, and fresh perspectives that empower you to transform your life. Whether you're seeking innovative ways to heal your body, your mind, or nourish your soul, this podcast offers practical tools and wisdom to help you thrive in all areas of your life. Let's rewrite the rules of wellness together. Step into your power, reclaim your health, and discover what it means to truly thrive from the inside out. Hi, everyone. I'm Diana, former corporate marketing guru turned holistic health journey seeker. I thought it would be perfect to kick off my podcast with an episode where I share my journey so that you can all get a better sense of who I am, the voice behind the microphone, and what my journey is and where I came from. So it really all started when I was young, probably about 8 years old. I am one of three, and I'm the oldest. My little brother was born in the late 80s and unfortunately was vax injured and had a lot of behavioral issues, was constantly ill, and my mother was seeking answers. And on the traditional side of medicine, she was not getting any. And so, as any warrior mom would, she was trying to seek answers. And so she didn't take sort of this is how it's going to be as the final answer for my brother, and really started to seek alternative ways that she could support him, to provide him and herself some relief. I, at 8 years old, don't remember all these details, but I do know that my brother being sick and my mother seeking answers really set the path for us as a family to support our bodies in an alternative way. For that, I'm really, really grateful. My mother discovered chiropractic care, and so that's something that we started to do as a family. So anytime we were sick, we didn't go to the pediatrician, we went to a chiropractor. And the chiropractor adjusted our bodies to realign and create balance and allow our body to heal itself. And that also then led into finding a naturopath, which we still as a family use. And sort of the rest is history. But I'll say that growing up that way, I always, in the back of my mind, sort of knew that the traditional medicine didn't always provide the solution or the core answer to what was going on with our bodies. So at a very young age, I learned that, if you're sick, you have X or Y, there's a reason something's happening in your body. And I think that mentality is what is really driven me over the last couple of years in my own health journey and my family's journey. And, the thing about the late 80s and early mid 90s is that, alternative medicine was not mainstream. There were no podcasts. There really was not an internet. I don't think there was an internet where you had endless amounts of access to so much information. And so I give my mom a lot of credit for being empowered enough. I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to any mother who will fight for their kid, to get answers. And so growing up and using those things as a young kid, it was completely, as far as I knew, utterly normal. And then as you kind of get into your teenage years and you realize like some of the stuff we do is a little different, I had a stigma around a lot of it as sort of being weird. However, I still did it all because I knew the results, which were it made me feel better. But then, skip to my 20s and my early 30s, where you're sort of creating your own opinions. And I strayed a little bit away from that stuff. I still went and saw a chiropractor and so forth, and the naturopath. I was hyper focused on my career and hyper focused on, you know, getting my master's degree. We got married, had a baby, all the things. And after having my first child, I suffered pretty severely from postpartum depression. Now, I did not know that I was in it until I was out of it. So this is like in hindsight. For somebody who's like an A-type personality and somebody who can multitask and manage a lot of things at one time, I found that I couldn't do day-to-day tasks. Like, I found them crippling. I can remember talking to my sister one time on the phone, and I had to like, pack the diaper bag and drive 20 minutes to meet my family for a lunch, and I was so overwhelmed that I was, like, hysterically crying, and I that was an inflection point for me in my brain, like, something is not right with me, but I didn't share, I didn't talk about it openly. Because I didn't fully understand what was going on, and you fill out those surveys and the doctor, like, "Are you happy that you have" "Yeah, I'm happy I have a baby, and I'm happy that she's okay," and I just filled out those bubbles, never really constructively having a conversation with my doctor or really even sharing with my family or my close friends what was going on. And so I share that because that was a time where I felt like I lost myself for about a year. And when I get pregnant with my second, I was so fearful because I didn't want to go back to where I had been after the birth of my first daughter. I didn't want to lose myself and feel completely out of control, like not having any ability to do normal things that everybody should be able to do. And I feel like society, um, you're supposed to have a baby, have that successful career, a great marriage and like all the things. So much pressure on moms nowadays. They're supposed to balance it all and balance it with a smile. And I was balancing it with a smile, but behind the scenes, really just freaking out. So when I was pregnant with my second, I was really, really adamant about wanting to not be in that same place. And so I started with most women in a stage of desperation. I wanted to do anything, but again, the way I was raised is if I could support my body the right way, my body can heal itself. I wanted to seek first alternative ways to support my body and also my emotions and my hormones post the delivery. And so I did tons of research and walked into the yoga studio where I was doing prenatal classes, and they were diffusing essential oils, and I was instantly drawn to it. And long story short, I realized essential oils do more than actually just smell nice. And so at night, I would just go and start researching, and I researched the crap out of solutions to avoid postpartum depression. And this company I got introduced with, this essential oil company, had supplements and they had specific essential oils and protocols that you could use to support yourself post having a baby. And I'm happy to say that I followed all those things and I was able to manage my baby and, my then 3.5-year-old without losing myself, which was absolutely huge. And so during my maternity leave with my second, I at the time, by the way, had a pretty intense job in Manhattan and was doing the commute. And so during that maternity leave, I realized like there were some changes I had to make in my life because I wanted to be around my children more. And I wasn't the healthiest because you can imagine that stress. They call it the rat race for a reason. And I remember immersing myself during my maternity leave and learning just about anything I possibly could around essential oils. Eventually got to actually go to some of their farms and see everything firsthand, which was absolutely incredible. But I realized that there's so much information out there that I never tapped into, obviously, as a young kid. And there's so many things that you can do to support yourself, to support your mind and your body and your soul. And I really, really dug in. And then the pandemic happened, the global pandemic. And that was an absolute crapshoot. We were balancing two jobs while two young children in the house. We were working while we had the two children, and it was just a time of my life I never want to go back to be quite honest, and I think a lot of people can agree with me. And so it was a time of a lot of stress, and I needed an outlet. And that community that I had created and tapped into for education during my maternity leave ended up being really my saving grace. They were a group of women who wanted to work on themselves. They wanted to be educated about toxins in their home or, you know, emotionally healing with essential oils, etc. And so that was my lifeline during that time. I did a lot of therapy, a lot of self work, a lot of workshops. I also, had learned a lot about toxins in the home. And so my oldest, who had suffered pretty bad from eczema, she had eczema on the insides of her arms and the backs of her knees. And nothing that we did from a traditional sense really healed it. Did it help? Somewhat, but it never really like fully got rid of it. And I took this class and learned about toxins in the home and discovered that the basic cleaners that I was using, which I thought were safe, were, not. And I started using this plant-based cleaner through this company. I'll provide a link to that cleaner and my resources on my podcast page. And that was 8 years ago, and I never looked back, and my daughter's eczema cleared up within 2 to 3 weeks and never came back. So I learned that that was actually her body was reacting to something that I was using in the house on a daily basis, and I actually thought it was doing good. And so there were so many instances in the early days of my girls' lives where my eyes were opened. And I always say that essential oils was sort of my gateway drug back into the alternative world because it really was. I got access to a community of people who were so supportive and so incredibly smart and had so much knowledge that they were just willing to share openly. And all of those things really, really helped me survive COVID. And then, I felt compelled to share this information. I still had my 9 to 5 job and in finance, and that was great. And my job was doing really, really well. But I still felt like this pull to want to do and help other people with their health. And so I did classes on the side, and I did something I called Self-Care Saturdays where, we got together in person and helped educate on various different topics in the alternative space. So in 2022, we made a huge decision to move from Connecticut, which we lived at the time, to South Carolina to be closer to family. And so the last couple of years, I've really been focused on getting our family settled. And it's a lot to kind of restart a life on your early 40s. And just get the kids settled into sports, get settled in our new home, make new friends, and really kind of try to build and find like minded people down here, which I only really just started to do. But I still kept feeling like a calling to wanting to help people. And I started experiencing some things. Well, I should say I've had one health issue that's been happening since around COVID and female related. And then in the fall, I did a breast thermography and the results were not that great. And so I know I had to address things there. And then I also started to get this weird hip pain. And I was very concerned that something was wrong. I did tons and tons of tests, CT scans and MRIs, and all of which concluded that there was nothing wrong. All of it really was a wake-up call for me to realize that I needed to start taking better care of myself. And so I started working with a functional doctor, did a hormone panel and all of that, and have really been on quite the health journey myself since the fall, and really trying to get answers on something that I've been experiencing for quite a long time. I gained, over 17 pounds in a time period of a year, which was alarming to one of my doctors. And so I knew something was going on. I just didn't feel like myself. And so with that functional doctor, I started to do clean eating and really removed everything from my diet and lost all the weight that I had gained. So realized that my body was on overdrive. And also in February, I had a big life event. And unfortunately or fortunately, I was laid off from my corporate job in finance. And so all these things together really made me pause and just think, what was I doing with my health? And what was I going to do for my career? And that little, bug in my ear where I want to help people was ringing. And so I had gone on a walk with my dad shortly after I got laid off and just sort of pondering about what am I going to do, and shared a dream that I had had with him about always wanting to open a women's wellness center. And I found that with all the women that I talked to over the last couple of years, I felt like all of us were experiencing similar things, right? From a traditional medicine side, coming to a doctor with symptoms and wanting an explanation and not getting it, being told that, well, that's just how it is, or you could take X medication, it's not going to help, or you could be on this for a long time. And in my head, knowing that the medication isn't going to actually solve the core problem, but like something is going on in my body, and there's something probably going on in all of these people I'm speaking to's body, and nobody's getting the answers that they need to solve the actual problem versus just medicating or being left with no answers. And so I had said to my dad, I want to create this wellness center that creates a community for women to feel safe, to share what's going on, similar to that community that I had during COVID, and a place where women could come and seek alternative ways to heal their mind, body, and soul. He said, well, why don't you do a podcast and do exactly what you want to do at this center, but for people nationally? And that's sort of how my idea started, how Women's Wellness Authority started, just on a walk one day with my dad, post getting laid off. And here I am. So I'm so excited to be able to share all these wonderful people that I have found to talk about so many different topics. The goal of my podcast is really to help educate people to realize that there are alternative answers out there. It's a way for me to share my journey. It's a way for me to create a platform for you women, Women's Wellness Authority podcast listeners, to feel empowered. And I hope that you leave episodes feeling like you have maybe something that you could look into that could potentially get to the bottom of what's been going on with you, and know that you're not alone, that there's so many of us out there that are on the same journey, that are experiencing similar problems, or, need to learn that there are things out there that are harmful to us and to our families. And the journey can be really overwhelming, but know that you have me to help guide you through. And I'm excited for what's to come. So thank you so much for your time. I look forward to connecting and bringing all of this education to everybody. I look forward to sharing all that there is out there in the alternative space to heal your mind, body, and soul. Stay tuned, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Women's Wellness Authority. If today's conversation inspired you, shifted your perspective, or sparked something within you, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who might need it the most. Have a story of your own or something you'd like to share? I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Women's Wellness Authority. Please note the content shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider regarding your health and wellness decisions. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and most of all, stay well. Thanks, everyone.